The Tajumulco and Tacaná volcanoes soar high above the coffee plantations that cover the hillsides on the border of Guatemala and Mexico. At 4,400 meters, Tacaná is the highest volcano in Central America. These two volcanoes are at the heart of a watershed system that is almost 1 million years old. This system is now under threat by the increasing levels of water pollution from the coffee industry, as well as erosion, deforestation, and pollution caused by hillside communities. But it is coffee farmers themselves who are now leading the way in trying to turn around the fortunes of this threatened ecosystem. This is the town of Ichiguan, an indigenous farming community. It's high, 3,500 meters above sea level. Traditionally, families are large, and the high population density puts added pressure on the environment. Temperatures up here drop dramatically at night, and trees are felled for firewood. Mountainsides that once were forests are now stripped bare. The barren land is then further damaged by the widespread grazing of sheep herds. Regular heavy rainfall at this high altitude has led to increasing risk of mudslides. The rainwater simply slides off the surface down the mountainside. Geronimo Navarro is the mayor of Ichiguan and recognizes the dangers this poses to communities down below.
Because we are right at the very top here, this situation also affects the communities below us. Climate change has meant that we now see extremely heavy rain on a regular basis in one afternoon, which this soil is unable to cope with.
This erosion can have catastrophic consequences. In the first few days of October 2005, Tropical Storm Stan hit the region. Flood and mudslides caused over 2,000 deaths and damage estimated at some $2 billion. Water cascaded down the eroded mountainside, unimpeded by the sponge effect of trees and roots. It destroyed roads, bridges, and water supply systems, and with them, crops and livelihoods. Today, northern Guatemala is slowly rebuilding itself. But some houses are once again being built in the path of any future flooding. The government says it's aware of the dangers.
Acá en San Marcos había cierta resistencia de la población a organizarse para todo el tema de la reducción.
Here in San Marcos, there was a certain amount of resistance from the local population to organize themselves in terms of projects relating to disaster prevention and also the reduction of our negative impact on the environment. What Hurricane Stan did was showed us all quite clearly that in this part of the world we had managed our natural resources badly, and because of that we had fallen victim to this disaster.
Humanity first fell in love with coffee back in the 9th century in the highlands of Ethiopia. Today, coffee is the second most valuable globally traded commodity after petroleum. It is estimated that 500 billion cups are consumed every year around the world. It's produced by over 20 million farmers worldwide. More than half of the world's coffee farms, 5.8 million hectares, are found here in Central America. And it is this industry, so vital to the economy of the region, that is now leading the way in transforming how water and other natural resources are used on these volcanoes. A bit further down the mountainside, between 1,000 to 2,000 meters, are the coffee plantations so vital to this region. It's shortly after dawn, and coffee workers in Guatemala are heading to the fields. It's harvest time. For over 100 years, coffee has been at the core of Guatemala's economy, and today it generates 1/3 of the country's foreign currency. These pickers are part of the La Igualdad farming community in the shadow of Tacaná volcano. Each day during harvest, the farm produces between 2,000 and 7,000 kilos of coffee. Profits are shared out between its 150 owner-producers. La Igualdad is spearheading the way coffee farms are now using their most precious resource: water. It used to take 3 million litres of water to produce the farm's annual harvest of 70,000 kilograms of coffee. But in a remarkable turnaround, La Igualdad now uses only 225,000 litres, a saving of nearly 93%.
Farms used to behave very irresponsibly in terms of the environment. We have tried to look at ways of turning this around. This is why we are now working using a totally organic process. This means that we are all now responsible for looking after our environment.
They've achieved this turnaround by changing the way they use water, recycling it throughout the entire process. 1 kilo of coffee is produced by fermenting about 5 kilos of beans in fresh water, a process that generates enormous quantities of a highly polluted acidic coffee wastewater. Farms like La Igualdad have traditionally dumped this toxic wastewater and pulp residue straight back into the rivers. Not anymore. Now in La Igualdad, before water is returned to the river, it is stored in holding tanks to be thoroughly purified. The toxins that contaminate the water are further reduced by growing organic coffee. Conventional coffee is grown with more pesticides than any other agricultural crop. Organic coffee is produced under strict international guidelines, without pesticides or fertilizers. The growing global demand for organic and fair trade coffee, where producers are guaranteed returns as cooperative members, is helping these farmers and their environment.
We are seeing from the company who buy off us that we have a strong market in Japan, and yes, the prices are acceptable. But we don't just farm this way with the aim of making money, but also with the aim of saving our environment.
La Igualdad hopes to be 100% organic by 2010. There's more to be done. Just over 1/3 of their coffee beans are organic. Guatemala produces almost 10% of the world's organic coffee, the second highest after its neighbour, Mexico. But the pressures of the coffee industry on the water table only tell part of the story in this region. From the top to the bottom of the mountain, people throw their rubbish into the rivers. At 2,000 meters above sea level, this is the town of Caserío Las Pilas. Here, rubbish is thrown directly into the water. Children swim nearby as their mothers wash clothes.
Sí, porque cualquier cosa tiran al río. O sea, cualquier basura.
Everything is thrown in the river upstream, including rubbish, and all of that comes down to us here. The water is very contaminated because of everything that is discharged in it. But because this is the only river nearby, we have no other choice but to wash our clothes here.
No nos queda de otra que tenemos que lavar aquí.
Today, community leaders are trying to change people's attitudes. Miguel Paz represents villages bordering this, the River Guatamala.
Eso es lo que anhelamos, en un futuro tener educada a la población.
We are trying to educate the population in order to improve the quality of our water and thus improve our lives.
Para vivir mejor.
To illustrate how serious the problem is, community leaders take a sample of water from this part of the river and compare it to a pure sample taken near its source.
En primer lugar, no hay un lugar a donde llevar la basura.
We don't have anywhere to take our rubbish. We create our own rubbish and throw it wherever we can.
A donde la tira.
There is nowhere specific to take it.
En cualquier lugar la basura, no hay un lugar específico a donde depositarla.
Farming communities in river catchment areas are now organising themselves in an attempt to find solutions to tackle some of these problems. A tree nursery in Tacaná was started in May 2007. To date, 13,660 trees have been planted, with the aim of replacing those chopped down for firewood. Project leader Lázaro Pérez hopes to increase this number to between 30 to 40,000 trees in 2008.
We have come around to the idea of having a small tree planting nursery to grow trees for both our farms, but also for communal areas. This is our aim, because we need trees for firewood up here for our families. Tree planting now is for the mid and long term, so that our children have wood in the future.
Fields are ploughed into terraces in an attempt to control the flow of floodwaters, with farmers attempting to find ways of transforming traditional techniques. But the water all heads in one direction, down. And it is at the bottom of these volcanoes where communities are suffering the consequences of erosion, deforestation and pollution created further upstream. And Tropical Storm Stan wreaked havoc amongst communities here. This is the fishing village of Casarillo Fargos, a community of 850 people. Don Leonardo Barrios and other villagers believe Hurricane Stan was an accident waiting to happen, and could happen again. On the outskirts of the village, Leonardo shows where a species of water lilies have choked a river tributary.
This plant is dangerous for our community. The waters that reach us at the bottom of the mountain are incredibly polluted, with high amounts of phosphorus, fertilizers, calcium and such like. This plant grows because of this and is blocking the river. The water cannot get out. The water should reach the main river to the sea, but the plant blocks it. The danger is that this leads to flooding, which has happened before with Hurricanes Mitt and Stan.
Anteriormente en las otras tormentas como fue el Mitch y el Stan.
Leonardo remembers only too well the sudden flooding of the river Suchiate, which ran by his house. He and his 8 family members managed to escape in time, only to watch their house and all their belongings be washed away in the torrent.
El agua empezó a entrar a las 3 de la tarde.
The water started coming in at 3 p.m.
Un día jueves a las 3 de la tarde.
It was a Thursday, I think.
Tuvimos que desocuparla e irnos.
We had to leave because we could see that the water was coming up so quickly.
Venía muy rápido y tuvimos que abandonar, salir con nuestra familia. No fue fácil.
It wasn't easy to lose our house.
Nearby, a mangrove project ensures that any future storm damage from the sea is reduced by the buffering effect of the mangrove trees. What's more, the trees are home to a large variety of fish and prawns, supporting local fishing communities. Martin Sanchez works for INAB, the National Forestry Institute.
Sirven como filtros al filtrar de todos los contaminantes que bajan a través de los ríos.
They act as filters for all the pollutants caused by urban centers and industry that are brought down from further upstream. They are also extremely important, as was seen by the recent hurricanes Mitch and Stan, because they were able to absorb large quantities of water.
There are approximately 17,500 hectares of planted mangroves in Guatemala. This particular forest is vast, 140 square kilometers. The widespread damage caused by Hurricane Stan has ensured the long-term survival of the mangrove project. Without them, damage along the coastline would have been much worse.
What we are aiming for is to have areas where the mangroves can be managed, areas like this that are stable for growth, and also areas where man's hand cannot touch the established mangroves.
The mangroves extend over the border into Mexico. Just up the coast, on the Mexican side of the border, the battle against pollution is far from won. Here, the Cahoacan River that has flowed from the volcano summit meets the sea. Fishermen ply their trade on a beach strewn with garbage. Cristina Pacheco monitors the pollution levels on this beach.
Sí, estaba pensando justamente cuál es la pregunta correcta.
I've been thinking, what is the right question here? Is it, where are we going to put all this rubbish? Or is it, why don't we stop using so much rubbish?
No necesitamos utilizar un envase plástico que tarde años.
We do not need to use one plastic bottle that takes decades to be destroyed naturally in order to drink half a litre of water. We have to change the principles of consumption that we currently have. We have to consume in an intelligent manner.
Here, as in Guatemala, the impact all this has on the water table is leading local residents to search for solutions. Once again, coffee is a big player in this region. Mexico produces 20.5% of the world's organic coffee, making it the world's principal supplier. Here in Chiapas, it's so-called shade coffee. The beans are picked amidst the leaves of fruit trees planted to stop erosion. This also favours the development of rich and complex flavours. Shade trees also fix nutrients in the soil. As well as binding the soil, trees also provide economic benefits to farmers.
The advantage of having other produce other than coffee is that we do not depend solely throughout the year on coffee production alone, which is harvested once a year.
Solo de la producción de café que es anualmente se cosecha.
Having other products, other plantations, other produce gives us an alternative.
All across this watershed, there are projects to try and turn around the devastation this region has experienced. Many of the people who live here realise they have a hard task ahead.
We understand that we are at a critical stage in terms of global warming, and we, farmers and producers, are the ones who should ensure that we look after our environment from now on.
To find out more or comment, visit tve.org/earthreport.
Mm-hmm.